Hey everybody,
Perfect.
and welcome back to Careers in a Crunch. I'm Arti, and today I'm joined by Kristine Caps. I'm super excited to have her on my podcast and hear about her professional journey. So once again, I want to thank you for being here. I'm super excited to have you on my podcast.
Thanks for including me. I'm really excited. When I met you that day in our Girl Scout event, it was really nice that you have a podcast and that you're looking to help your peers in trying to figure out a way to figure out their path. There's so many opportunities out there, so it's really nice that you're doing this, and I'm happy to help in any way that I can.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I guess we can just dive right into some questions.
Sure, of
So,
course.
for starters, what did you major in, and how did that have an impact on your career, if it did at all?
So I actually had an interesting journey to nursing. So right out of high school, I went away to school with a plan on being a teacher. So I actually have a bachelor's degree in education. And well, actually in child and family studies, which um, I was able to use to teach kindergarten up in Syracuse, where I went to school. But after a couple of years, even though I loved the school, I loved the people I was working with, I loved the kids, it wasn't exactly what I was looking for. So I ended up taking a leave from my job in the school and went and worked in a doctor's office, and just to get some exposure to see, like, is this really what I want to do I want to make the big plunge into something new? And after just a really short time I realized that it was. So I moved back home, which was, a big step after graduating college, and went back to school. There was a College of New Rochelle at the time was offering a second degree program. So you were able to get a bachelor's degree in nursing without having to like start from scratch. So I was able to get a second bachelor's degree in under 2 years, which was great. So once I had that, I had my bachelor's in nursing. I was working all through nursing school in labor and delivery at another hospital. And I worked there for a while, loved the atmosphere, loved labor and delivery, but still wasn't really where I wanted to focus. I always had been drawn to oncology. So one of the girls that I work with in labor and delivery told me about a place that she was doing some per diem work, which was White Plains. And that's where I started my career. And 26 years later, that's where I am still.
That is an incredible story. I think it's so cool how you had um you got a major in I guess child services. I think that's so cool, and I just find it great how you were able to, I don't know, I guess you kind of made the switch after you said only a few days, but I think you knew it was something you wanted to do and you pursued
Right.
it, which I think is like incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the beauty of nursing, and I don't know if I'm like going ahead in in some of the things we decided to talk about, but I think with nursing, what's so nice about it, it's so versatile that you can really do anything. You don't have to um really just focus on one area. There's so many opportunities that open up to you, which is what was also really appealing to me.
Yeah, I think that is amazing. Kind of going off of that question, what first inspired you to have, right, a career as a nurse? And was there like a specific moment or a person that sort of inspired you to take that jump?
So growing up, my dad, who was in finance, always talked about his time in the military where he was a medic and how he really loved it. He was good at it. He was an OR tech, and it was really like exciting for him, and he really loved it. And he actually um, came out of the army and met my mom and got married. So he never really finished college. And I think he always kind of regretted it and always talked so fondly of it. That was like my first, you know, thought about like, oh, maybe that's something that I would like to do. Um, and I don't know if I mentioned this the last time that we met, but growing up in first grade, my very best friend was diagnosed with leukemia. And I remember not all of her treatment because I was so young, but I remember just the impact of seeing her, knowing that she couldn't always go to school, seeing her without her hair, and just realizing like how interesting I mean, now in looking back, I mean, of course, as a first grader, I don't know that I necessarily thought it was interesting, but it really just made me think like, oh, maybe, looking back at it, maybe that's something that I wanted to do. But yeah, as far as being a nurse, I think it just gives you so many opportunities. We can do bedside care, there's administration, education, being a nurse practitioner. It really is the one career I think that evolves into so many different things, that was appealing because it didn't just mean that I had to do one thing. There were a lot of opportunities for me.
I think it's so cool how personal I think your story is. I think between your dad being a medic in the army and also your best friend who was diagnosed with leukemia, I think it's so like great how you kind of had this personal connection to the healthcare kind of system and the way it works, and how you kind of took all that with you into your career.
Hmm. Yeah. No, I was lucky. I was lucky. And I actually also had, parents that were really, really supportive. And, after funding my first education, really said, okay, well, then if this isn't really what you want to do, try to find something that you do like. Because, you really don't realize, I think, that you spend the majority of your time at work and with your coworkers. So it really needs to be something that you enjoy, that you find value in, and that is rewarding.
Yeah,
And I think nursing
definitely.
does that for me.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, um, um, my next question is, as a nursing director, what does a typical day look like for you?
So it's always changing. So as a nursing director, my role is to oversee other nursing departments. So right now, I primarily oversee the outpatient services and our inpatient holistic team. So it's a variety of different things: infusion, wound care, hyperbaric, and holistic. So it really can vary day to day. Um, but I think that's also what's really exciting is that I don't ever walk in to work knowing what the day holds. I mean, yes, of course, I have tons and tons and tons of meetings and working on lots of projects. But I also am lucky enough to still get an opportunity to interact with the patients, which is my absolute favorite. And I think that it is really something that I try to prioritize. I don't do it as I don't have the ability to do it as much as I can, but I still like to maintain most of my clinical skills. So I let people know that if they ever need an IV started or report accessed or something, to please feel free to call me, because I do like to still stay fresh and kind of like in the know with what's happening. Um, but in terms of a typical day, I will have like a bunch of different meetings, whether they're finance or volume or budgeting, that kind of stuff, or even patient experience is really a big thing. We're working always trying to improve the patient experience, and then also too making sure that the nurses feel supported, our nurse practitioners feel supported, and that there's good communication between the departments. So all of that, sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's a little more difficult. There's always like different pieces of it sprinkled with patient concerns and, specific patient needs that I have to kind of work with my team to make sure that we can accommodate. So it's exciting because every day is different, keeps me on my toes. But yeah, I mean, it's nice. It's a nice job to be able to stay fresh every day and realize like, oh, okay, today I don't know what to expect, but I just know I'll get to see my patients, I'll get to interact with the nurses. I mean, there are patients, I think, because the benefit of working in a hospital in the community is that many of our patients have been the same for many, many, many years. So I've known them through different phases of their life, and they've known me through different phases of my life. So that makes it even a little more special.
I always find it so fascinating when people tell me about how eventful but unexpected that their days are. And I think it's so amazing how you have so many different kind of aspects of your day, right? There's so little time, but somehow you're able to do all these things. Um, I really like what you were saying about because you're in this like leadership position, but how you kind of still love to get to connect with the patients
Hmm.
because, and how, you do these little things to make sure that you're still kind of connected with what's going on. And I think that's really cool. And that's a great skill to have to be able to, manage all these different things and still, make time for all the different people, all the nurses and the patients and things like that. And I think
Right.
that's just incredible.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, it's not easy, right? I mean, I think that everybody has aspects of their day that are more difficult than others, but I mean, I think seeing the patients, seeing the nurses is like the fun part of my day. It can be stressful, right? Because it's busy like any any organization right now, healthcare is busy. But if you try to prioritize as much as you can and be as supportive as you can.
Yeah, definitely. Um, so yeah, my next question is, how does being a nurse differ from being in a leadership position?
So I think with nursing, um, I mean, I don't want to like make it sound less than what it is because it's a little more task oriented where you have certain patients you have to take care of, there's medications you have to give, there's patient care that has to be done. So while it never feels finished, it's a little bit more once you do these say like 20 things for these 10 people, you can kind of say like, okay, my day is done and I'm ready to go home. The difference being in a leadership position is just it's really 24-hour coverage, 24-hour responsibility. So, you're always, I'm always on my phone. I'm always on my email. We have an internal communication system where we can share clinical information, but also escalate some concerns if need be to, different team members. So I'm always on that. So I think there's that piece of it that's it's always kind of moving and evolving. And I think too it's a little bit more global, right? Like I'm looking at things in a bigger way to support what's happening at the chair side or at the bedside.
Yeah, I think that's really fascinating how there's two different sides, like in this kind of like healthcare kind of field, where, right, you have one where the nurse is sort of seeing everything firsthand and taking care of all that, and then as a leadership, you as in a leadership position, kind of oversee all of it, and kind of like you were saying, help things in a more like large scale sort of way.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think the nurses, which is nice because I've been there so long and we've worked together so long, they feel comfortable coming to me and saying, like, look, we need this, we need that. This is not working well. This is, which is great because as much as I try to pride myself in being involved, I don't really know the nitty gritty all the time. So it's good if things need to be escalated, that people feel comfortable enough to get them to me. But I also have a really great team of people that I work with in each of the areas. So I know if I don't get a chance um, to talk to them personally, they can bring that to their managers who will then bring it to me. So, I mean, I think that is really important to have those open lines of communication. But I think you also, too, that as a leader, that's a little bit challenging because you don't always like what you hear, right? Like it's hard if you're open to feedback. You have to be ready to accept both the good and the bad.
Hmm.
And healthcare is hard right now. Patients are getting treated longer than they used to. They're more sick than they used to be, which is great that we're able to provide care much longer and keep people, out of the hospital much longer. As an outpatient, overseeing the outpatient areas, I do get to see patients once they're discharged more often. Um, but it also means that patients are a lot more complex than they used to be, which can also be a little bit more difficult for the bedside nurse who used to have 10 patients and they were like, okay, right now they're like a little bit sicker. So they take a little bit longer and they're a little bit more physically and emotionally, demanding. But So
Yeah.
that's the one part that gets challenging, and I think no matter where you are, right, you feel like you never have enough resources. So that's challenging too, trying to make sure that with all of the things that we have, supporting the needs of the staff.
Yeah, definitely. And I really like how you brought up the idea of like communication and teamwork because as someone in your role, right, you have a lot of different teams, and I think it's super important to like be able to kind of bring those teams together and right, like you were saying, be able to communicate with all of them because I think communication is key in like almost in any role, any job,
Right.
anywhere. And so yeah, I think it's like, and I'm really glad that you brought that up because I think that's
Sure.
really
Yeah.
important. Um, what skills would you say are most important for someone who's like interested in healthcare?
I mean, I think, I know we just talked about it, but really communication, um, not only for your staff, but also with your patients. I mean, I remember I was a new nurse and I used to work nights, and I loved nights because I felt like that gave me the most opportunity to talk to my patients because there were fewer doctors around, fewer family members around. So you really got to know your patients. And I remember I had a young woman who had just had her appendix out, and I went in to introduce myself. And I mean, and I was much younger. So, it was the nighttime. Her family wasn't there. And we were kind of making small talk. And she had this beautiful orchid on her windowsill. And, like I could tell she was nervous, and she looked at me kind of like, how old are you? You don't really know what you're doing. Right. So I was like just trying to distract her. And I was like, oh, I'm like, what a beautiful flower. I said, it's so, whatever I said. And she goes, and she was a little bit of a worrier. And she said, I know someone gave it to me and I feel so bad. I don't even know how to take care of it. And I said, which I always laugh about now, but I think, oh my gosh, what did I do to her? I said, I know everything I touch dies. Like, imagine your nurse says that to you. And she looked at me like, what? I said, oh my gosh, no. I meant like plants. I said, I'm really good with people. So we laughed about it. But, like, had we not been able to like laugh about it, right? Like, she would have been all night with her eyes wide open, afraid to sleep, afraid to, rest. So I think, too, just that story always reminds me of like, as much as you say, whatever, and you try to communicate and be clear, sometimes even just like a lighthearted conversation can be so pivotal for a patient. So really being willing to be clear about communicating, but also being a good listener, because that's hard too. Sometimes patients they come into the hospital with their own like preconceived worries. So trying to assure them that you really will take the best care of them and you really want to be a partner with them. Patients are a lot, and I don't want to say this disrespectfully to patients of years ago, but patients are a lot smarter now, with the internet, and everybody, is able to kind of Google everything, and it's a lot easier to research. So you have to really be on your game, which I think
Yeah.
is great for us because it encourages the nurses too to learn a little bit more and make sure that they know enough to have conversations about the procedures and about the care that the patients are having. So I think it's communication is really important. I think being willing to work hard. It's definitely not a 9 to 5 job. I
Yeah.
remember back again when I started, everything was on paper, so all of our notes had to be handwritten, and it they took forever. It was so long. And if you had like 10 patients and you had to write a note that it told the story of everything you did in that 12 hours. We would work 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And there would be days that I was there till 10 o'clock in the morning still writing my notes.
Oh wow.
So, and I would have to work the night still that night. So I would go home, I'd fall asleep by 11 or 12, and then have to get up at 5 to go back to work. So I think, definitely it's so much easier now with, online documentation and everything being more computerized. We used to have to handwrite our medication lists,
Oh wow.
which took forever. So now, with a computer, everything is scanned. It's a lot easier. So I think that, that's helpful. But I think it's hard work. It definitely is. And Yeah. It, but I mean, I think people going into it that really, really, really want to be a nurse, um, you go into it with your heart first. And I think that
Hmm.
really helps guide the rest of your practice.
Yeah, I think those are some really important skills, and I love the story you told about the patient. I think it's so funny how like you still remember that moment because it was such like right, it was a significant moment
Right.
in the early stages of your career, and I think that just shows like the communication and the type of nurse that you were. And then also, as you were saying, hard work obviously is super important because you were saying being a nurse is not a 9 to 5 job, it's a 24-hour job. And so you really have
Hmm.
to be kind of ready to do anything and everything. And
Right.
so coming into it with kind of the mindset of hard work, I think, like you were saying, is really important.
Yeah. And the value, but you do get so much out of it. I think as I don't, I think the amount of work and effort that I've put into it is nothing compared to what I've gotten back from my patients. Just their success stories, right? The fact that they're, doing better, feeling better, seeing that, right? Like, in oncology, getting that patient to be able to go to their daughter's wedding or, their son's graduation is such an important gift back to me, that I get to say like, wow, I was a part of that, is really a great part of being a nurse.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. And kind of, you were talking a lot about how you had to work night shifts and things like that. And I think like burnout is something that's talked a lot about in specifically, I think like the nursing field.
Hmm.
So, sort of, what did it look like from your perspective when you were a nurse?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely did not talk about burnout or self care or any of those things. As a young nurse, I also picked up extra shifts, for overtime. So I was not prioritizing my own well being at all. And it wasn't anything that was like frowned upon because nobody was.
Hmm.
And I don't mean that negatively, it's just we didn't know. I think we do a much better job now of providing resources for our newer nurses. Um, because back when I was a nurse, it was very common to hear that nurses eat their young, that it was very hard to find a more seasoned, experienced nurse that was willing to take on a younger nurse and sort of take them under their wing and teach them. I was lucky that I had great preceptors that I never really felt that, but I had colleagues that really got kind of crummy preceptors and they felt like they were fighting, fighting to stay in the profession because they were like not really supported. So I think, then we didn't have that, but now I think um, hospitals really realize that it is a hard job, that patients are more sick, that the nurses need more support. Prioritizing your own self-care, your own mental health is really important. And I think too, finding your group, your friends of nurses. I mean, there were nurses that I started with that I still, lots of girls that I went to nursing school with work at the hospital with me. And we're still connected. Even people that I went through orientation with that are still there. Um, you find your people, and I think it's really good to have I have two like girls that are like my core group that I can like in the middle of a day send the emoji to, and they're like, nope, we got it, we're gonna go get coffee, so that you have those people. And I think it's really good to lean on your friends. One thing I think that's different from when I started to now is that where I am, the hospital that I'm at, White Plains, we have like a nursing. It's like almost like an orientation that lasts a little bit longer, like a preceptorship. So you get um, sort of guidance through those beginning stages of your nursing career, where before I felt kind of like floundering a little bit and you had to figure it out on your own. Now there's a lot more support for those newer nurses. We also have access to, one thing that the hospital does that I take advantage of um, is they bring in different exercise classes. Like we just had that Pure Bar came and they do in the hospital, they'll do a class and it's free of charge. So you get to kind of like try out the gym, but it's nice too because you get that like 1 hour of I'm going to take care of myself. You know, they've done yoga, they've done Pilates, they've done Pure Barre. There was also like some hit class that almost killed me. Um, but I mean, that's nice too. And, you know, the hospital also has this employee assistance program that gives us access to a variety of different supportive programs. And I think it's also good too, just even having a nice bank of PTO days that you can take a day off for like a mental health day. You know, I mean, I think that's also something that before, like I remember I used to working the 12-hour shifts and picking up overtime. I would work 4 or 5 days in a row, 12-hour shifts. Like that, it was crazy. Like my paycheck was great. But, you know, that's people don't really do that anymore because it's hard to work that much.
Hmm.
So I think we're definitely more aware now, which I think is great because I think that's benefiting the younger and the newer nurses. I mean, I think it's benefiting everyone, but really like those younger, newer nurses because I think it's hard. I think they, um, as much as you prepare for hard work, um, it's different than when you're really in the throes of a crazy day with a full load of patients. So I'm
Yeah.
glad that we have some supportive services for newer nurses now.
Yeah, I think it's great. Like you were just saying how many types of like supportive services there are. And I didn't even realize because a lot of times I think especially you can see in like TV shows and movies and things like that how I think I all the late nights and things like that. And you were saying that there was like definitely kind of a gradual kind of move towards more like supportive
Hmm.
systems for the younger nurses and things like that. And I think it's so great how um, right people that are in the hospitals kind of have these types of ways that they can, you know, take care of their mental health because I think mental health is talked about a lot more now.
Hmm.
And I think it's become, you know, recognized as something that should be taken care of. Um, and so I think it's so great that I think the hospital provides all these ways that the nurses can like take care of themselves, and not just
Yeah.
nurses, but anybody.
Yeah, anybody, which is really nice because I think too people never used to really talk about their mental health, but I think now people are more comfortable, and we do have you know people inside the hospital help that connect you to different services that are available
Hmm.
too if you're not really sure how to get in touch with them or how to utilize them. So it's been great. It's been a great shift. For you know for the benefit of because I think ultimately if the nurses are taken care of and the doctors and the physical therapists then it only leads to better patient outcomes.
Hmm. Yeah,
So,
I definitely agree. Um, what's something about nursing that people only understand once they're actually in that field?
um, so I think for me, I think something I didn't realize, I think I kind of knew it was going to be physically demanding, right? Like you always hear about like make sure you have good shoes, you're going to be on your feet all the time. And I don't know necessarily if it's because my primary focus was oncology, but how emotionally, and I don't want to say draining because I feel like that's kind of like a negative connotation, but how much emotional energy was kind of required. Um, I don't know that I expected that. I expected, you know, because in nursing school, you learn like, oh, I have to calculate this medication dose and I have to make sure I change this dressing in the right way. But really, understanding that therapeutic communication and being supportive to your patient was something that I didn't expect was going to, and I don't want to say take so much out of me, but really take more emotional um, involvement than I expected. And I think too, like, and it's you're not just taking care of the patient. I think we always focused on what the needs of the patient were, but you're really taking care of the whole family. So that was something that I never, until I was into it a few more years, that I realized, like, oh, you know, it's not just the person in the bed, it's their family, their wife, their kids, their husband, whomever. Um, so, you
Yeah.
know, that's a part that I didn't expect.
Yeah, I think as you were saying, I think I've always thought about, the healthcare type of system as a especially like being a nurse as sort of a physically demanding job. But I think more and more, right, I've kind of understood that, right, healthcare is also, there's a lot of like emotional intelligence and things like that that go
Hmm.
into the job. And as you were saying, right, in the specific field you work in, oncology, it can be really hard to see, right, a patient go through that, but then also see the family and the way that they're trying to support, right, their loved one, but they're also obviously going through this whole thing as well.
Right. Yeah, no, exactly.
Um, and then going into advice, what advice, or if you could go back and give your high school self a piece of advice, what would it be?
Um, I think I would, hmm, I don't know. I think, going away to college, right? It was so much pressure to go to a big school, go to a name school. I had no idea at the time really what I wanted to do. Um, And I think I was so focused on finding a place to go without really finding a purpose of where I
Hmm.
wanted to go. And maybe, would that have prevented me from pursuing something a little differently in the beginning? Had I given myself a year or so to take like a gap year, um, to kind of figure out what I wanted to do, would that have helped? I mean, I think me personally, maybe that would have.
Hmm.
I also think too, I was very afraid to try things outside of my comfort zone, which I really see that in my kids. It's definitely different with the newer, younger generation. Like we were all back when I was growing up expected to go away to a 4-year school and get your degree and get a job. Where I think um, kids today are a little bit more in tune with what they want, and so maybe they won't be in a position like I was in, where I kind of just went away to school without a real big plan. Um, but yeah, I think I would have told myself to like take it easy, figure it out that first year, try a bunch of things that were out of my comfort zone to see what I really liked. Because while I am happy now, I always, I remember I find myself now going like, oh, I wonder like when I wanted to be a pharmacist, like that looks really exciting. Do you know what I mean? But it was never, and I never something that I knew so much about to be able to pursue. So really just keep an open mind would
Yeah,
have been something that I would have told myself back then.
yeah, I think that's a great piece of advice. I think like taking risks and being open to opportunities is something really important and something that a lot of high schoolers would benefit from hearing, because instead of trying to work down a straight path, right, you can kind of see all the twists and turns and, you know, where you might have an opportunity that you might not expect to actually enjoy or, find something out of it, but in reality you did.
Right, right, exactly.
And going into my last question, what advice would you give to high school students who are still unsure about what they want to do?
Well, I mean, I think, right, a little bit of what we just talked about, like just keep an open mind because there's so many opportunities right now. And you guys are all, like, in general, so much smarter than we were back, growing up. Like, I just feel like you're so much more informed and aware of what's around you and connected to different opportunities and to really take time to see what is out there. I see it in my kids right now, like trying to encourage them to find, work for the summer. They're like, oh, we'll just go work at a camp. I'm like, is that really what you want to do? Or do you want to try and find something that's a little bit different to see what do you like? What interests you now? Try to get a job in that field. Like, if this is the only time in your life that you don't have to support yourself, right? So really try to find something that kind of like lights a fire in you. Um, because I think it's hard. I think, being an adult comes really quick. So if you can find now when the pressure's a little bit less, what really excites you and what you enjoy, I think it'll help you as you get older.
Yeah, I think that is an amazing piece of advice. And I think it's so important for high schoolers to hear that they don't have to be binded to like one specific thing, but rather, they should be encouraged to go out and try different things and see what they truly have a passion for.
Mm-hmm.
Because, if you do that, you can help, like, it can help open new doors and things like that, which can,
Right.
you know, lead you to a whole new world of like opportunities and things like that.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
I just want to thank you so much for being
My
here. I
pleasure.
learned so much, and yeah, thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you so much. Thanks for your great questions and for taking the time to meet with me.
Yeah, of course. Have a wonderful day.
I will. You too. Take care. Bye.
Bye. That's it for this episode of Careers in a Crunch. If you found today's conversation helpful and informative, be sure to share it with a friend or family member. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an interview. Thanks. Bye.